I'm sorry, I'm eager for knee-jerk. Who's got a knee-jerk reaction right away? Anyone, just yell it out. Go ahead. This is a safe space.
You guys like the added comedy.
You like the comedy?
Yeah.
Yes.
I was surprised how emotional it was. I actually started tearing up a lot.
If you remember from the movie series, it was very emotional too, and so yeah, and obviously that's what we were going for, little both, right?
Yes.
What was your knee-jerk reaction watching it again? When was the last time you watched the pilot?
I saw the pilot. They sent it to me, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, and I watched it with my family, and I think we all had the same reaction. You know, it was. It's like the PG version of Lethal Weapon that we all kind of came up with. You know, it's more of a family-friendly kind of version of the story, which is very unusual for me to kind of play. I play a lot of heavy, kind of dark stuff, which Riggs is obviously kind of heavy and dark. But I just thought it was exciting to kind of be a part of something that did have the humor and the action. You know, Mick G did such a great job at making things go boom. And then the tender aspects of it, you know, and the relationship between Murtaugh and Riggs. So it was a really enjoyable experience to watch it as well as kind of to shoot it.
So Jen was an EP back on Lethal Weapon 4, is that correct?
Correct.
It seems like this is a natural for television, but how long has this been in the making, do you know, trying to bring this to the small screen?
Can you guys hear? I don't love microphones. Can you guys hear me okay? I have a loud voice anyway, so. It actually, I worked on Lethal Weapon 4, and actually that was actually the last film I did working with Joel Silver. Then I transitioned into television. So Lethal Weapon as a TV show actually has not been in the making for a long time. Actually, it was this year. Matt Miller, creator of the show, showrunner, we had worked on Forever together and done 22 episodes of that television show for ABC. When that show ended, Matt actually had a meeting with Fox. They really wanted to get in business with him. And one of the things they said to him was, you know, bring us an action comedy. We know you write action well, we know you write comedy well, and we want something with heart. So he had come to me, we wanted a partner again. And one of the great things about being at Warner Brothers Television is they have obviously a lot of titles and iconic films that producers like ourselves have access to. And long story short, one of those was Lethal Weapon. And I think that it clearly was a big challenge in terms of taking such an iconic title, but we knew in his hands he would bring, again, all of the heart, all of the comedy, and I think really reinvent the spirit of these characters, because it wasn't about rehashing them, but really about reinventing them for 2016.
All of these fall shows were announced last month at the New York Conference. I'm sure you know about those. But I know I talked to the Warner Brothers president at the time, and he was extraordinarily excited about this one in particular, and he couldn't talk enough about it. But at the same time, I can't imagine a more daunting task than casting these two roles. Can you talk about that before we get to his journey to this?
Yeah. I would say that people ask sort of what is the biggest challenge with this, and I would say that's what it was. I mean, I knew once we had the title, sure, there are people out there who were skeptical. It was such a great movie, don't ruin it. I knew in Matt's hands, he was going to make it great. We already had Damon Wayans attached to it, but really the role of Riggs, I mean, Matt and I looked at each other, and that's really, that's what scared us shitless. What ended up happening, I'll talk a little bit about this because I think you know, I think that, so many actors came in and felt so beholden to the original Mel Gibson role that they were channeling Mel and trying to do Mel rather than really bringing their own unique perspective and take on the role. And that was when Clayne's name came up, obviously it was written with a character in mind, who was from Texas. It's almost like a light bulb went off for us, and we'd seen some of his work. I mean, it was instantaneous. I mean, once we saw him, once we met him, once we had seen his work, it was a no-brainer. And I think what's so great is the moment, I mean, even from, honestly, the first day of dailies, I don't think anybody was ever thinking about Mel Gibson. I mean, the great thing about these two guys, it's a true bromance. Not that we don't love obviously, everything that Danny Glover and Mel Gibson did in the past, but I think these guys have really reinvented that relationship in such a special, heartwarming, funny, emotional way.
You're an Alabama boy, right?
I am.
Ah.
Yeah.
Now, I before we get to this audition, you've done a lot of TV, and you've actually done some favorites of ours. He did Roswell. He did a little Roswell.
I did do a little Roswell.
He did a little Buffy.
I did a little Buffy. That was my very first job. Buffy the Vampire Slayer was my first job ever as an actor.
Really? What did you play?
Rodney Munson in Ink and Mummy Girl.
Oh, nice.
I was a co-starring role. I died in the teaser.
Oh, you did?
Well, I remember I opened the script and I'm looking through and I was like, where am I? And then I went to the very front. I was like, oh, I died in the first 5 pages. So yeah, that was my first acting job.
And you did a little Jericho too.
I did do a little Jericho.
And that was. And how did you last a lot longer on that one?
Oh no.
No.
I've made a career dying. That's my dad. He always asks me anytime I get a job, he's like, do you die in this? I was like, well, yes, but it's a paycheck.
So you were working regularly. How did you feel right before this audition, how your TV career was going? Did you feel like, God, I'm still waiting for that? Or?
Look, I've been shooting Rectify for the past few years. You guys are the only people that watch that show. Outside of my mom and dad. So I've been extremely fulfilled. And I actually left Los Angeles and moved back to Alabama and bought a farm. And I kind of had questioned what I was going to do with my life, much less my career. Because I kind of, I've been doing this for 20 years. Walk to Remember was like my first kind of big kind of thing, and then I wanted to understand what acting was really all about, and I've been on this journey, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, if anything, anymore. I kind of enjoyed being a farmer and a father, and I was getting ready to do this series with David E. Kelley and Amazon with William Hurt and Billy Bob Thornton and Maria Bello, and we were scheduled to start March 13th. And I was going to try to work that with Rectify, which I'm in the middle of shooting now. And my agents called and said, look, Fox is really excited about you about this new pilot. I'm like, I'm not interested, not because of Fox, but the idea of prime time and kind of, so it's a quite grueling schedule, So I said, I'm not interested, and they kept calling, and I finally I remember I was sitting at the Piggly Wiggly with my wife in Clay, Alabama, and they called and they said, look, you need to really consider this. And I said, look, I don't want to know anything about it. He goes, it's a lethal weapon. I was like, fuck. I go, well, here's the thing. I go, I'm definitely not interested because Shane Black wrecked it with that script. It's arguably one of the greatest scripts ever written. And Mel Gibson, so I was like, get out of here. Don't call me again. And then that was on a Friday. On Monday night, this is 2 weeks before I start the thing with David E. Kelley, they called, and it was like 11 o'clock at night, and I'm watching Straight Outta Compton screener. And my agent called and said, so Peter Roth, the head of Warner Brothers, wants you to come into his office tomorrow, get on a plane, and he wants you to say no to his face.
Oh.
So I said, I'm not going to do that. And he goes, well, you're going to go at least sit with him because he's, Peter Roth. And I said, okay, well, I need to read the script. So I know why I'm saying no. And I woke my wife up and said, I got to get on a plane tomorrow. And we sat down together. And we read the script, and I couldn't say no. And I said to myself, I said, this may suck, and people are going to hate me for doing this. But as a guy who as a 12-year-old boy who just wanted to pretend for a living, I couldn't say no to the guy who was so broken but wanted to do the right thing. And I just felt it lent itself to such exploration for an actor. And so I went out there. My intention was to go out there and say no, and then I read the script. Now I'm trying not to fuck it up. So I go out there, and I'm like, you know, having these conversations. And that was on a Thursday. I said yes, and we were shooting the following Thursday. So I had kind of pushed it around so long that I didn't have time to prepare really. But I kind of saw the character kind of like as Bugs Bunny meets Andy Griffith, you know. And, you know, he's like sticking his finger in the gun, you know, Elmer Fudd, and then like tying it in a bow, and then maybe turning around and shooting him in the butt with it, you know. So I was like, that's how Riggs is, you know. He just doesn't really, he's Bugs Bunny. And I just kind of jumped into it, you know. And then I was fortunate enough to have great material and Mick G directing, and of course the fabulous Damon Wayans.
Great quote, right? That was so nice. You said you were worried about people hating you, so you were mindful of the comparisons to Mel Gibson.
Yeah. Because I would be. I'm quite judgmental. So, I'll see people doing stuff, I'm like, oh, you idiot. You know, like, you know better than to mess with that. And, but I remember kind of what everyone, and not to make any comparisons, but I remember how I felt about Heath Ledger playing the Joker, and about Tom Hardy doing Mad Max, and I love both of those performances. And I said, you know, look, you just can't fuck it up. You can't think about Mel, and you just got to bring whatever I have in my reservoir, you know, from 38 years on this planet. I just got to bring that, and kind of see what happens.
So now how will this balance out with Rectify, and what happened with the David Kelly project?
I had to call, well, you know, look, I'm sitting in the room with Peter Roth, and Peter's like a Labrador puppy. You know,
Totally.
He's running this, right? You know,
Yeah.
he's fucking, he licks you to death, and he's so excited.
does. He's
And he's
total
like,
hugger.
I know David, and now I'll call David, and he's gonna be fine. He's gonna call him, and I'll figure it out. And he'll get you out of the show. And I was like, okay, you know. So I called David and just said, look, they want me to play Martin Riggs for the new Lethal Weapon pilot, and he was like, man, I think that is an excellent idea.
Oh.
And he was so supportive, and you know, he allowed me to kind of walk off the show, and as far as Rectify, I'm finishing up our final season, season 4, and I'm in the middle of that now. I've got to be back on set Wednesday, and bittersweet, of course. Rectify has been such a major part of my professional life, just the growth of an actor, working with Ray McKinnon. So yeah, none of it conflicts. Look, when things are right, it's right, and it doesn't matter what you do to fuck it up, you know?
Hey, do you know what previous work they had been looking at, Peter had been looking at, that convinced you that he's your man?
Yes. Well, it's funny because I actually didn't hear. I'm going to give you guys the flip side and give you the flip side because I'm so happy to hear you were sitting at the Piggly Wiggly. So while he's sitting at the Piggly Wiggly that Monday night, it's Matt Miller, myself, our casting director, sitting in these. You know, the casting process is dreadful. We bring people in, they go out, they do their read, and Peter hands us our asses on a plate. So this is about probably at 8 o'clock at night. So remember when you got that call, and starts yelling at Matt Miller and I, we don't have it, guys. We just don't have it. I have the most important title that Warner Brothers Television could be making this season, and we don't have it. So what we had obviously been talking about Clayne, but he had passed. We brought him up again. We popped in Baytown.
It's Baytown Outlaws, which is a movie no one has ever seen.
Am I allowed to bring this up?
You can totally bring it up.
B-A-Y town,
Well, the original script was Baytown Disco. And I read the script, and some buddies of mine wrote it. Let me tell you something. My buddies wrote this script. I say they're my buddies now. These guys had written the script in Alabama, and a friend of a friend said, look, these guys they really love the work that you do, and they would love for you to read the script. And I read the script, and it was fantastic. It made the blacklist in Los Angeles, and I called up Billy Bob Thornton, and he kind of came on to help us, and we ended up getting Eva Longoria and a ridiculous cast to shoot this little film, but it was a quite small little project, and we shot it in New Orleans, and again, no one saw this film, mind you, but somehow Peter Roth saw this film.
Did.
Yeah.
And decided we popped in. We actually probably were there. It was hence the reason for the late phone call till about 10 o'clock at night, because he kept saying, show me more, this is our guy, and we kept saying, we've spoken to your agent, and he has said no. And Peter Roth, in front of all of us, who probably never makes calls like this, got on the phone and said, get me Paul Santana on
My
the line
agent,
with all
yeah.
of us sitting right there, and would not take no for an answer that Clayne was absolutely getting on a plane as soon as he could reach him.
It's like I say, you can try really hard to mess up your life, but if it's meant to be, you can't, you know. And I'm really good at screwing things up, but this one, yes, Peter called and just was like, look, man, whatever you did on this movie, that's my guy. And but again, if I had read the script at the very beginning of this process, there would have been no question I would have been interested in working on this film. I mean, this show. It's just, Matt did such an incredible job with the material.
All right, so if you adapt Lethal Weapon for the TV, I guess it's a no-brainer. You have to use the same characters, the same conceit, correct? I mean, did you ever visit the idea that while we'll call it Lethal Weapon, we'll do characters inspired by, but we won't use Murtaugh, we won't use Riggs, the names? Was it always, okay, we're going to do this, we're just going to go for it?
I think here, look, from the get-go, at least from the development process this year, it was yes, we're going to go for it because, again, like it or not, and it is a challenge. Using existing IP has been the trend, but we did feel that unlike some other titles, without mentioning them, that had been used in the past, maybe hadn't done it quite as successfully, but we felt in Matt's hands, a title this iconic, why not? And in terms of the characters, I mean, certainly, yeah, there was no question of not using Murtaugh and Riggs, but in terms of rounding out the rest of them, I mean, I think we've taken certainly some liberties, some creative liberties with that, and I think, but what we'd certainly like to do in obviously episodes and seasons to come is also sort of have some fun with some of those, again, characters that people have recognized from the franchise, but again, reinvent them. What is the 21st century version of those characters?
Yeah, in this version, Murtaugh has some serious cash. He's living in like a $2 million house in the San Fernando Valley.
But again, we've flipped. I think that's, again, something, what does a modern family look like? Who is the breadwinner in that family? It's actually Trish, who's making the salary and allowing that lifestyle. It isn't him. So, I think that again, is something that the writers and Matt were really interested in addressing is, you know, what does a modern family look and feel like? And kind of presenting that to everyone on television, that it isn't necessarily always, again, the dad, the head of the household. In a lot of ways, she is. I mean, financially, figuratively, and I think we're going to see that going forward.
Now, I feel like I've seen Lethal Weapon at least 45 times, but I don't recall his widow being related to somebody within the city.
Correct.
So that's a new.
That will be a new.
Okay.
Yes, that will
And
be a new
why did you
arc.
feel the need to do that?
Again, I think that, I mean, look, at the end of the day, this is a show about, and Matt will say this, and Clayne has said this, that's about two men who are broken, who have broken hearts, one figuratively, one literally, and how they're going to help each other heal. But it is a procedural. There will be a case or a case that is solved, whether it's over one episode or series of episodes. But Matt was always interested, and he talked about this a lot with Clayne, about serialized storytelling and having a longer arc that would play over the course of a season and seasons to come. And so it makes sense that this, you know, set in Los Angeles, using ideas like police corruption.
And I think it's important as well to kind of, you know, if you're going to tell, I mean, it was 30 years ago that the film came out, right? And I think it was also a way of kind of creating a genesis for this guy.
Yeah.
So I think it helped to kind of see the wife, and for also that we kind of raised the stakes a little bit that she was pregnant. And I think it helps for the newer audiences to kind of have a wider understanding of who these individuals are. So I kind of felt like that he addressed that with the pilot and kind of giving us more of a backstory on these individuals.
All right, now talk about the McG-ness of it all, especially shooting those incredible action scenes and your fight scenes where you were looking pretty bitchin'.
Yeah, look, Mick G is Martin Riggs, okay? He is a fucking lunatic. He's a fucking lunatic. So, like, that was the thing. No matter what I came on set with, all I had to do was hang out McGee for a couple of minutes. I was like, okay, I know who this guy is, because he is that high energy, high octane kind of individual. And look, I was extremely fortunate to work with our stunt coordinator Trella, who he has an incredible team, and they just worked with me extensively. We would work on our lunch because again, I had a week really before we started shooting. From the moment I said yeah. So he would work with me before we started shooting and after we wrapped and again at lunch. And those guys just, again, worked extensively with me to kind of make sure that I had it all right. And I was just fortunate enough growing up in Alabama, driving fast cars and shooting a lot of guns and, getting in fist fights in bars or what have you. So, I guess, past 38 years kind of helped train me for this role.
The scene, the jumping into the race scene, I thought you did a pretty dang good job of editing the heck out of that too. And then, obviously, I don't think you jumped into a real race, but it looked pretty good. Can you talk about that? How was that whole process?
We didn't. We were fortunate because when we started shooting, they were setting up for the Long Beach Grand Prix. And they'd set which takes place on the actual roads themselves, so it's not on a track. So they begun kind of setting up the tires and the fences and the bleachers and so forth. So it was all there, and McGee had the idea of what if we bring our own Indy cars in, and we actually shoot before the race, 2 days before the race, and then we'll go back when the race actually happens, and we'll shoot B-roll, and then kind of merge the two. So they brought in their own Indy cars. And they had me exiting the vehicle, and then my wonderful stunt double jumped from the two vehicles, and then he was the one that jumped off of the vehicle, of course. And then they harnessed me kind of onto the Mustang to where I had play, but I wasn't going to go off of the vehicle.
He was going pretty fast, though. He's minimizing this. There were a few moments there where...
Well, look, he got real excited when it started raining. And we come around turn 3, and that Mustang starts sliding, and my body starts sliding. So my legs are hanging off, and I see the retaining wall coming towards me, and I was like, well, shit, this is how it's all going to end. I'm going to be paraplegic for the rest of my life. And then he caught it. He caught the car, and we were right at the edge of the wall, and then he took off. And I realized I was working with professionals. So at that point, I cut the umbilical cord and let it go.
Wait, did you shoot on the actual course?
We shot on the actual course.
Holy crap.
In Long Beach.
It was fantastic.
That's really cool.
Yeah. This is where, again, a lot of it is the stars aligning. When the script was originally written, the draft that Clayne read, Matt had written it as a chase sequence on a freeway. On the 40, one version was the 405, one was Sunset. But this is, the wonderfully collaborative nature of what we do is that once we had our team brought in, certainly McGee and Tim Trella, we'd been talking stunts, and they said, hey, did you know, just again, by coincidence, when we were, the days we were down in Long Beach, they said, did you know the Grand Prix is going on? How lucky is that?
It's nutty. Now, I remember that obviously the first movie, the role that Jordana fills right now was that blonde, was
actually
so much fun, and with great comic relief. But I imagine that you don't hire a gorgeous woman like Jordana without having a little, romantic interest. So is that a potential that we're seeing down the line? Is that a spoiler? Does it matter?
Yeah, here's what I'll say, and I'll let you talk a little bit about it too. Certainly, I think that is one romantic possibility. And I think there's others. I think that, again, you guys just saw the pilot. I think that what's interesting and heartbreaking about Riggs and the character that Clayne is playing is, again, the complications to heal and to get close and to let his guard down and to potentially try to live life, accept life, because right now it's all about a death wish. And will it be Cahill? Will it be someone else who is actually able to kind of help mend this broken heart? We want to play a number of possibilities there. She will be one of them, but not the only one.
Does anyone have any questions? Can you go to that microphone so they can tape it? Yeah.
I don't like microphones either. You can have mine.
So I just want to say you guys did such a great job of balancing, bringing the original tone and characters of the original films and also putting a new spin on it. And you've already kind of talked about, that fine balance that you walk with that. I'm kind of wondering for you, as an EP, what is your role in the story development process and seeing how it all comes together? Do you hire great people, great actors and a great showrunner and say, cool, you guys, bring that story, or are you, giving notes every step of the way? What do you bring to the story?
Yeah, really brief. So I'm an executive producer, but I'm what's known as a non-writing executive producer. So, and again, I think that role is different depending on who you're partnered with, who you're working with, who you are, who I am. Having come off of 22 episodes with Matt, we already had a very close working relationship. I feel like I'm selling ATX motto. I love TV. I watch a ton of TV. I do not miss working in film at all. So I have no desire to be in front of the camera or even operating the camera, but I love helping storytellers, whether that's writers, directors, actors, make great television and make great product. So I can just tell you specifically on this project, what that means is, I will not do any writing, no desire to do any writing. But yeah, I am with Matt, kind of hearing, from pitch, hearing how he's breaking the story, giving notes on story arenas, outlines, scripts, helping with the marketing, interfacing with the studio and the network, publicity. And Clayne can talk about this, I think, handling any of the barrage of the smallest issues or the biggest.
I tell you what she does do
Yeah.
is she helps to create an extremely safe environment on set. And when I say that, not because of stunts and so forth, but having guys like Jen and Matt on board, it felt like a family right away, and that allows the actor to feel extremely safe to take chances and to make mistakes, because we can only learn from that. I think as an actor, you try things and it's like, okay, well, that didn't work. Let's try this. And it's really, that's kind of the process that you go through. And someone like Jen, it felt like a family, and to bring that kind of energy to where it's not just a bucket of notes. It's the support. There's always going to be notes and adjustments because you need that outside eye. I think when you're involved in the process, you become attached to it and married, and it's like your child. So you don't want to see anything wrong with your child, right? So you need someone with that outside eye who's a little somewhat, kind of it's their job to be a little disconnected and kind of just help you kind of fix it. And she, of course, brought us that, but for the most part, just a really comfortable place to work.
Another question?
Go ahead, dude.
This is awkward. So you had
Sit up here. This is extremely awkward.
So this question's for both of you, actually. You had mentioned that there was this trend recently of IP, intellectual property, making things into TV shows, and you kind of referenced one that didn't work, and I'm just gonna mention one, Rush Hour, and there's a similar premise, there's some similarities between Rush Hour, I think, in this, in the same way, TV show. It didn't work, and I got canceled. Were there any apprehension, any worries about that?
Yes.
And if there were, what did you do and what did you learn from that show not to do to make it work?
I didn't watch the show. I'm not a fan of CBS because I'm not 70, but
That's not true.
I like
It did
Netflix.
quite well in 1849 this year.
I like AMC. I like all the things that we all like because it's really amazing and excellent. So yes, I did not want to do a fucking remake of a movie onto a TV show. But again, Matt wrote a great script and he hired Damon and Mick G. So, look it, man, I said no to this thing, and then at some point you just go, God almighty, we're all gonna die at some point, and If my career dies before I do, that's fine. You know, I'm really good with animals and cutting grass and working on a farm, so I've got a great green thumb. So I just said, look, I mean, I think we're all terrified that this thing's gonna suck, you know, but you can't approach it that way. You have to just leave your ego in your car and expectation, and that's what art is, right? Whether you're painting or sculpting or interpretive dance, you can't bring any of your normal bullshit with you to work, you know? You have to cut it loose, and you have to trust this thing that's inside of us that kind of guides that light. And I don't know what it is, but I trust it. You know, it's kind of like whatever this thing is, religion or whatever, you know, whatever this thing is, you follow it. And that's kind of how I have to follow this job, you know, and just do the best work I can, and not think about what other people have done. I mean, look, on stage, there's not a role I didn't play that 50 other dudes didn't play, right? You can't do Shakespeare. It's like, I'm not going to be the first dude to play King Lear, you know what I mean? A ton of people, but I can't worry about what those other crackers did with it, you know? Like, I got to show up, and I got to say, look, I can only bring who I am, you know? I'm not fortunate enough to be Daniel Day-Lewis and only do one movie every 5 years and win an Oscar. You know what I mean? I don't know how he does that. I got mouths to feed and college to pay for, you know what I mean? So I got to go work. And I don't like hanging sheetrock or digging ditches, which is what I would be doing if I wasn't an actor. So you just have to jump into these roles, you know, and just let the universe kind of do the rest, you know, not judge it.
Rush Hour is such a hot mess to even consider adapting
The
because...
movie wasn't that good. I don't know why you're going to make a TV show out
And
of it.
it's like, you're so dangerous of like, every second, playing too much with the stereotypes and the overt racism. Let's be frank. I mean,
And what
I
else?
didn't know that.
See, and I'll say, and this isn't meant to come off as cocky or arrogant, because I agree with Clayne. Like, for me, it's about, I can do my best work. Not everybody, by the way, I don't understand how, not everyone's gonna like this. But where I think Rush Hour, and by the way, many people worked very hard on Rush Hour. Hopefully there are a lot of people out there who did like it, okay? It didn't work. One of the things that I can look at, though, and at least say for myself as a producer, one of the reasons I didn't think it would work, one of the major reasons, really had to do in the casting. And I think that they really did try, again, I don't want to say like mistake or not mistake, but one of the things I think we are not doing and didn't try to do in ours, I think that they tried to replicate those characters from, again, an older movie. We weren't interested in doing that. We were interested in taking, again, the spirit of those characters and reinventing them, which is one of the reasons I think, we were successful.
another question. Does anybody else have another question? Go ahead. Oh, go ahead, dude.
I love the couch in the middle. It has all the questions.
Thank you guys for coming here. I was really struck by the Los Angeles porn quality of the thing, just how beautiful the city is. And so I was wondering how much thought has gone into sort of replicating the sense of place about Los Angeles.
A lot. Because I begged them to shoot this in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Because I live in Alabama, and that's a 2-hour drive. And I think that's the whole, and Mick G even wanted to have, I think it's going to be a character in the show.
Yep.
The show doesn't really work in Atlanta.
Or Vancouver.
Oh God, yeah, thank God it doesn't work in Vancouver. That city is great for 3 months out of the year. The rest of the time you want to slit your wrist.
That was a good question because he's absolutely right. That house, that they live in. Do we have to end? Oh, no, question. Go ahead.
Hi.
I thought you were ending us. Go ahead. Yeah. Go for it.
I really appreciated the multiple layers of PTSD that were explored in this pilot episode, not just with what happened with the wife and the upcoming baby, but also with the veteran status. So is that going to be explored more? Do you have consultants? How are you doing research?
We're going to explore that more. I think that's a I think there's a couple of issues that we're trying to address in this show, and I think the racial issues that we're dealing with in this country are quite prevalent right now, and of course what our veterans are going through and the lack of support that they receive, and I hope to we have a couple of SEALs, Navy SEALs that work with me daily on the show, and look, I come from my family is all military, and it's a travesty of what happens in this country after these young men put their lives on the line, and they come back to this country without support. And I hope to address all those issues that these young men and women are dealing with on a daily basis, and I hope to bring as much awareness to that as we possibly can.
Anyone else? Anyone else want to? Just one more question, I'll let you go. So you're obviously, you look very scruffy in the show. Are you going to stay that way? Because I'm kind of liking how you're looking right now.
My mother really likes how I look right now too, but I think Riggs is a hot mess, and I kind of think the stash I think what Selleck did with that stash back in the day, I think that needs to be brought back. So yes, there will be a mustache, and I'm not sure what the hair is going to be, but I'm thinking wild and free. Yeah, because I'm shooting Rectify, and Teddy is very un-Riggs-esque. Teddy is high and tight, and his peacock way. So yeah, I don't know. I think we're really gonna explore the messiness and the down and gritty side of Riggs. And then look, it's a progression, right? This is the genesis of who this guy is, and his experience and the journeys that he's going to explore throughout the season will kind of define who he is if we're fortunate enough to kind of continue this.
Thank you so much.